Adam, welcome to the Z Learning Podcast. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thanks, man. Awesome to be here. So glad we could set this up.
Me too. And wow, a lot of stuff going on in the world, right? In our field of content writing, copywriting. I just really wanted to bring a fellow writer on here, fellow copywriter, fellow creative. We can just talk about this, just have a conversation. For my audience, before we get into that and unpack all the things of recent events with ChatGPT, et cetera, tell us a little bit about your background. If I'm not mistaken, you describe yourself sort of as you love the long form written content and editing, right? Maybe you could give a little intro to my listeners about your background.
100% love to. And yeah, you're totally right. This was like perfect timing because I feel like everything in the Twitterverse and in the conversation right now with AI and ChatGPT and writing, it's all like coming to a head. So this was just perfect timing for our podcast to be recorded. So a bit of background about me. My business is Ask Writes. It's just me. I started the company about 2 years ago, and I provide writing and editing services for individuals and business owners. I started out as doing freelance editing and writing, as a lot of people in this field did, and I tried to just go in with my arms as wide open as possible. I was like, I'll do any kind of writing, any kind of editing. I'm not specializing in anything, one thing or another. I just like wanted to do the work, really to get my feet wet and understand what it was like to work as a freelancer, work in this field, and really see where my strengths lie. Because I got into the field in the first place because I was trying to decide what I wanted to be doing for work post college. I didn't want to go and just work for a company. I was like, oh, let's see if I can do something on my own. So freelance work really appealed to me because of the flexibility and the freedom.
Yes.
And in order to figure out like what I wanted to be doing, I just reflected on what I was good at and what I enjoyed. And that came to writing. I had always been a strong writer, as I'm sure you were too, growing up.
Yep.
It's
Always,
fun
since
to
I was a
kind
little
of,
kid, elementary
yeah,
school, I was literally writing little books, stapling them together. Wrote my first manuscript in middle school. Wrote another one senior year of high school, and did a lot of writing in college.
yeah, it's fun to recognize when you have that skill, especially a skill which I feel like a lot of people, whether it's real or not, feel as though they struggle with, feel
Yeah.
as though they're not good writers, or they just feel like it's like pulling teeth and they just struggle so much to get the words out there. So I saw freelancing and then eventually starting my own business as a really awesome way to do what I love, do what I'm good at, and help a lot of people with something they really struggle with, but that's really, really important. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your background. Actually, we have very similar backgrounds. I haven't really talked a lot about it on this podcast, but I started as just a freelance writer, like you, wanted to do everything, anything that was writing related, like whether it's product descriptions or web copy or flyers. And it was funny because I also didn't know what I wanted to do. I was actually in law school for a semester and left, and
Shit.
I was thinking about becoming a history teacher. And I had a friend who started a PR agency, Zach Cutler. He's been a past guest on this show. And he's like a serial entrepreneur. And I used to think I was a business person because I thought business was like you had to know math, which I realized you don't need to know like high level math. You need to know some
Yeah.
math, but you
Yeah.
know,
Basic
um,
level.
yeah, exactly. So but I was so inspired. He would tell me his stories about being a entrepreneur, and I'm like, I realized like, you know what? Maybe I could start a business, but doing what? What could
Mm-hmm.
I provide? And he said I had already been blogging, and he said, your writing makes things come to life.
Mm.
So I really think you should be a writer. And I don't know about you, but I grew up at a time when writing was considered, unless you're like J.K. Rowling or something, it's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's a hobby, it's an art, maybe if you make it big, you're huge, but it's not something like you need to have a fallback regular kind of job. And I did consider journalism, but I didn't even know what copywriting was. I thought like what is that law?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, okay, it's oh, this is marketing and advertising. Oh, and let me learn everything I can about marketing. Oh, I have to also know about strategy too to be a better copywriter, you know.
Mhm.
And it was like it just went down the rabbit hole. And I did end up kind of specializing in certain types of content, like web copy, blogging, social media. And I've done, it was funny, like you do a lot of long form. My first project was a book based on videos. Um,
Huh, that was your first project.
my first like big project
First big
was
one,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it was like basically take like 25 videos that were all about anywhere from 10 minutes to like a half hour long and make them into chapters in a book. And try to keep my voice, but don't do it verbatim.
Yeah.
And I did that. I also did a lot of little ads, about us's and things like that.
Mhm.
Worked at an agency, and then it was like, you know what? I want to be free. I always freelanced, even between jobs that I had. I always freelanced, and then I realized I can just do this full time. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
And the freedom, the flexibility, and my goal was modest. Make as much as I would at a job at first. Get
Mhm.
my feet wet. Try working with different industries, different types of projects. And that's what I did. And eventually I got to the point where it's like I like projects that are subscription based because that made the revenue more consistent,
Consistent, yeah.
and a lot of short thing, not just short, but a lot of ongoing stuff like email newsletters and blogging.
Yep.
And then the goal was to pivot to eventually build an agency where I offered other things, and that's what I have now. You Facebook ads, social media, you know. But anyway, yeah, so very similar
Yeah,
backgrounds.
very similar, and it's kind of funny how we almost went in like, there's so much overlap between the kinds of writing that we do and kind of where we started, just I think how we were talking a little bit before the show started about just how we view writing, so it's cool to talk to somebody that, like, feels very similar,
Yes.
to me about that, but we kind of forked a little bit, and you shifted into more of, like, the copywriting, and I always just say I'm a writer, but if you dig a little bit deeper, it's more ghost writing than what I do rather than copywriting. So
Right.
my role for my clients very often ends up being somebody who listens and absorbs their stories and then almost serves as like a mirror and tries to repeat it back to them, but instead of saying it, I write it, because so many of the people I work with have fantastic stories and incredible articulation of what they want to talk about and why they want to talk about it and why their business is important and why their story was impactful to them, and they have all of the content. Like, I'm not creating content for people, they just either feel as though they don't have the skills or don't want to take the time or know that their time would be better used doing something else, and to simply give all of their content and their ideas and their stories to me and have me write it out in their voice so that
Hmm.
they get to walk away from working with me with a book or a consistent blog or a business article. And
Hmm.
I might have some other tips and tricks and ways of writing that kind of make it a bit more fluid and a bit more readable, because they just simply don't want to take the time. So when
Yeah.
I started the business, I just saw it as a great way to help people with their own businesses by kind of eliminating this roadblock that people see, which is writing long form content, because
Right.
it is time consuming
It's
and it is
time
a bit
consuming, even if
exhausting.
they
Yeah.
can write, even if they can write better than you. It's like too who they don't have the time for it. And I will actually will just say, I do a lot of ghostwriting as well. It's more short form ghostwriting,
Hmm.
but that first project was ghostwriting a book. I also did a ton of blog posts as his voice.
Hmm.
But I eventually and Facebook posts, but and later I found a niche where I've had a few clients where they were like mostly uh C-suite executives, therapists, coaches, um, different people, CEOs, where I would be ghost writing their LinkedIn posts
Yeah.
as them, not just like on their company, but as them. And that always requires a closer relationship. It's not like, oh, just find some stuff on the internet and uh repurpose it into 10 things about, 10 ways to do this, how to do that. You have to actually either have phone conversations with them or an assistant of theirs who knows them, or read their existing work, or
Yeah.
they send you voice notes. I've done all of that. You know, and from there find the angle, find what's actually going to be interesting, and then say it like they would say it in their voice. Which I think that kind of writing, I think a lot of and now, you know, I'd like to get into some of the current events, but there's a lot of writing like how to do this and 10 ways to clean your yard that I think is going to be almost completely automated. Almost completely, if not completely. But I think a lot of the voice stuff, at least for a long time, will still be very important. So let's get
Yeah.
into that. You know, I don't know about you, but I've had, I mean, I do more than writing, but I will say I've had a little bit of a existential crisis because I writer of all the hats I wear, consultant, entrepreneur, strategist, you know, creative, and I've gotten good at Canva and video editing, podcaster. Okay, but the one that always the identity I was always closest to my heart was writer, and
Mhm.
I don't know, where's it all gonna go? What do you think? Are we all gonna be replaced by robots?
Yeah. Maybe one day, but I don't feel like that day is today. And I so connect with what you're saying. And one of the most like exciting things for me once I started doing freelance writing and then started my own business is I was traveling and I was crossing a border. I think I was going from Belize into Mexico, and I had to cross a land border. And I was walking through their immigration. I'm getting my passport stamped, and they ask like, "What's your profession? Like, what do you do?" And I got to say I was a writer. And then I was like leaving, and I was in Mexico, and I was like, "That was really cool that I got to
I just got
say
chills
I'm
just
a
hearing that,
writer."
to be
It's an
honest.
awesome thing, and especially when you're
Great
something
thing.
like it's something you're passionate about and writing for others, also writing for yourself. It's really a lovely thing to devote your time to doing.
Yes.
So I really connect with that. So that's why it's a little weird when there's all of these news articles talking about are writers now irrelevant because of this new AI. And Chat GPT isn't the only writing AI out there, but I think it's probably top of the line right now, the most
Yeah.
advanced, the most accurate, least likely to create like colossal errors.
Mhm.
And I have messed around with it a little bit, and it's interesting. That's how I describe it. I don't see it as really like scary or revolutionary. It's just kind of interesting right now because you can very clearly see what it's doing and how it's creating sentences and paragraphs. And it doesn't, for a computer at least, the way I see it, it doesn't take a lot of work to create content. You're
No.
kind of just pulling keywords and key phrases and very obvious pain points and stringing them together in a English sentence that doesn't have grammatical errors. Like it's really just checking off those few
And you could
boxes.
prompt it through, like, the fancier you get with it, and I
Yeah.
mean, there's already a bunch of, just like there were a bunch of, I don't wanna say they're all phony, but there's a lot of overnight social media agencies that started that were just, like, basically spam bots.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of GPT businesses starting now too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you're not gonna have a incoherent, I don't, I think it's cliche, but say the bar has been raised, right? But in a way, it's like if the bottom of the writing barrel were basically incoherent pieces of copy, that's eliminated. The bottom of the barrel now is at least functional, like it makes sense,
Yeah, you don't
grammatically
read it and be
correct.
like, what does this even mean? Like it is
And
perfectly
even if you're from
understandable.
like another country and speak English, or
Yeah,
even if you're not a writer at all, you can actually write like that now.
yeah,
And now, meaning, like, I like to say, um, like, bad is gone, um, average has become bad, good has become average, and
yep.
great has become good. So what do you need to be? Very great.
You got to be very great. You got to put a lot of effort into it. And you actually said something super interesting where how these AI bots read, it's almost like somebody that didn't grow up speaking English, who learned English later and is very good at grammar and speaking properly and flowing the sentence together, but it's missing a little something. My cousin Yuval, who's from Israel and he now lives here in the States, kind of near me, said something very interesting to me a couple of months ago. We were talking about what I do, and we were talking about him learning English and getting better at English. And he has a gift for languages. He speaks like 5 languages, very, very talented, very, very intelligent. And learning languages is something that I just don't have a skill for. I'm really good with English, and that's where my skill set stops.
Me
Some
too.
people just have a mind for it. It's
Yeah.
a gift. But what you've all said to me was that what makes me a really great writer and what makes somebody a really great English speaker is being able to say the same thing different ways and not be repetitive and not be boring. And I think that's something, at least in my like limited experience of playing around with these AI writing tools, that's something that's missing. They're not creative. They're not necessarily eloquent or romantic. There's not emotion, or if there is emotion, it's it's been distilled down through
It
the
feels
AI
like it's
tool.
it's mimicking emotion. Like
Yes.
I've read some things that were pretty remarkable, and even though it was remarkable, I could still tell it was an AI. I don't know how or why, but like
Yeah.
even if it was poetic and it was actually better written than like a lot of even good starting out writers, or but it was like it still felt like exactly like you said, like you're reading a work that's been translated from something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, from something else. I played one of the kind of tests I gave it when I was playing around the other night is I said, write me a short story about somebody taking a hike. And it was very logical. John didn't know what he wanted to do on this beautiful Saturday. He decided to go out into the mountains behind his house. He took a trail he hadn't taken before, and he found himself at a beautiful view. And as he walked back down the mountain, he knew that that was a good day. Like, sure, that is a short story, and it follows logic. And
Passable,
then,
follows all the
yeah,
rules, checks the boxes.
checks the boxes, zero grammatical or spelling errors. Like, I think that is a massive advantage because we
Yeah.
all make them. So to have something that pumps out content like that that doesn't have any errors, that is
Yeah,
absolutely a tool.
yeah, and maybe we can get to the core of what makes someone a writer, a good writer, because like I think there's all different kinds of writers. I know
Mhm.
people who just without a doubt, they're not creative people, but they could they write better than me in a technical, formal prose style way.
Mhm.
They just do. They can write in a more concise and a more academic way. They can write, you know, I always saw myself as more of a creative and a storyteller. Like if you didn't
Mhm.
have writing, we may not have writing again soon.
Mhm.
But let's say we lived in like the ancient times and a society there was no writing, I would be the guy at the campfire telling the stories or
Telling
something like
stories.
that. So I was more so writing was just my vehicle of telling stories. I'm not because I can't draw. I'm not a musician, right? And I like to talk. So how could I do it more by writing?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's what it was. And actually proof of that, my mother tells me that when I was like in preschool and I hadn't learned how to write yet, I used to draw characters, but they were attempts at writing. I was telling
Uh-huh.
stories through like cave scratching,
You were the cave doing the cave art. That's
cave,
hilarious. Because
cave art.
in another life, before I got into freelance writing, when I was still in academia, I was on the path of like becoming a PhD in anthropology, and I was going to be a professor, and that I was
Wow,
going to be in academia. Yeah, we hadn't talked about that. That was my like path that I was like set on, and my
that's
field
so
was
cool.
anthropology, and my honors thesis was on Paleolithic cave art. Like that was what
Wow.
I studied and was all about. So it's still storytelling, just a different form of communication.
It's funny. I've been thinking about a lot this week because my other thing is history.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking about the history of writing. I didn't know we were going to go all the way back. You know,
We're going
let's
all the way back.
let's take it way back on this throwback Thursday. But you know,
Yeah, that's where it started. It started around the campfire, started
yep.
with oral and cave art. And then for a really, really long time in other cultures, storytelling was all oral traditions and
Yeah,
stories
the
just being
ancient
passed
Greeks I
down.
learned recently thought that written was like a cheapening of communication. They
Yeah,
thought it was lower than speaking. And the
yeah,
Greeks might be happy that we revert to oral cultures. And I don't know about you, but like I mean, I loved kids' books. I loved R.L. Stein and
hmm,
Harry Potter. But like I also was reared on a great diet of mythology. I loved ancient Greek and Roman myths, and Viking myths, Indian myths. I
oh
loved
yeah,
myths, and I loved urban legends and folklore. Like
hundred
scare like I don't
percent.
know if you ever read Richard Scarry, but I
Richard
love
Scarry.
he wrote
No,
these
not actually.
horrifying stories for children, but they were like old urban legends that he just made new again.
Those are so fun. Modern myths, like that's
Y-
really fun and creative. And I came from the exact same place. Mythology was my first foray into storytelling, and fell in love with it. And I was lucky that I kind of was coming of age in a time where like mythology became a bit more mainstream, and you started to
Mhm.
get series like the Percy Jackson series, or there's another series, which is the is it the Immortal Secrets of Nicholas Flamel or
Oh
something, which
yeah, yeah,
tied
yeah.
in some awesome
I read
mythology
that
as
some of
well.
that. Yep.
Yeah, so so good. So I just got a deep dive into all of these different myths and legends and creatures and stories and ideas. And when I first started to get into anthropology, my like desire was to connect all of these stories, these essential elements of humanness, and figure out what made them tick and what drew them together. I just thought that was like, still do, the
So I
coolest
think
thing
that,
ever.
obviously there's the technical expertise of writing. And I think you that we both have that. And that comes more natural to some people.
Yep.
And some people learn it. But I think it seems to me like at our core, we're both storytellers. We both like humans, bring people's experiences to life. It's interesting that you talk about anthropology because I didn't major in it, but I remember I took it like second semester of freshman year and I
Hmm.
loved it. It was like my one of the like I did really well in that class and I was like I thought I wanted to do it for a while, like travel the
Yeah.
world, live amongst people in like random places and
Different
learn like
cultures and everything.
so
That's what
cool.
drew me to it in the first place. I still love. I think it's a fascinating field. It has a fascinating history, and it connected with a lot of my passions. It connected with my
Mm.
passion for writing, my passion for storytelling, my passion for research, and my passion for travel. And it just so happened that I've shifted into something else. But we can all wear multiple hats, and all of that can still be super interesting and
Right.
relevant in our perspective today. So when we talk about things like writing and AI, it's all fueled by our perspective and how we look at the past and how we're looking at the future, and it just fuels an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of writers. I mean, the more life experience you have and other interests you have outside of writing, the more you can bring to your writing. Like
Hmm.
Ernest Hemingway was one of the most beloved authors of the 20th century, and he was quite an adventurer. I mean, he was traveling, all over. Obviously had other interests. So, yeah, it's fascinating. What was I gonna say? There was some other book. Oh, just wanted to ask you, have you ever read Lloyd Alexander? You heard of him?
Sounds familiar. I don't think I've read anything of theirs, but
So
the
he
name is
was like one
familiar.
of my favorite authors as a kid, and he wrote on like
Hmm.
I would say wrote for teenagers, like a young adult fiction.
Hmm.
But he got into writing because he was like when he was a soldier in World War II, he was stationed around a lot of like ruins in like Wales and he fell in love with like Welsh mythology. So
Huh.
he built this whole series based on that. And like I think the Black Cauldron or something. That was one
Oh,
of
that
his
sounds
famous.
familiar.
Yeah, it was made into a movie in the 80s, like a cartoon movie.
Okay, was
Um
it like a Disney movie, right? Wasn't it
yeah, something
made into a
like that.
Disney movie? Yeah,
Exactly.
maybe that's where it sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he wrote so many books that opened my eyes to other things because he had characters and they were all set in different worlds and times and cultures based on the mythologies of those places, like
So cool.
like in Saudi Arabia, India, China, ancient Greece, the in the Roma. world, like, and all this stuff was medieval, and he used the mythologies to make this kind of like world that was half realistic history and half myth, and it was
Yeah.
really cool.
It's
So
brilliant. It's so interesting. And that's the kind of stuff where I feel like that kind of blending of worlds and tying in of ideas, that's a human thing.
yeah,
And it also, like, to go back to the concept or the topic of AI,
yeah,
it is a human thing. It is human created. Like, it didn't just appear. It didn't come from another planet. It didn't come
right,
from another dimension. We as humans made it. So regardless of what role it takes, it is a reflection of us, and it is
yes,
developed by us, and it was created by human minds. And all of the words and topics and sentence structure and pain points and mediums anything that it's creating for, or anything that it's creating, all is still tied to us. It's still
yep,
content for us as humans to consume. It's still drawing ideas and pulling from source material that was human created.
right.
So I think that's like an important point to make, that it's not completely separate and completely replacing us. It's kind of something that we made, and
An
now we just have to
extension of
figure out how we
us.
want to use it. 100% an extension of us, nothing else but that.
Absolutely, and I love how we this like turned into kind of like a mini tribute to writing, which is really cool. I
Yeah.
hope not a I hope not a obituary. What do you call that?
Oh, yeah, an obituary or a memoir of
No, like when someone dies and you say the I hope this it's not a
an
eulogy
obituary. Eulogy.
of
No, I
writing.
don't think it's that. I think if anything, it's like it's like a love letter, and when we're
Yeah,
talking about what made us love it in the first place, why we love it now, and when you love something, and when something's your passion, and when something's your job, you obviously care about it in extreme amounts. So when anything comes up like Chat GPT that like maybe shakes up the status quo, I think any of us in the field go to that like existential place of like, okay, what is the world going to look like in 6 months
yes.
or in 2 years or in 10 years? Am I going to be irrelevant?
And I
Or,
think when you really love something, you fight
yeah,
for it. You know.
yeah. And you
So like
figure out a way to stay relevant.
we got to figure out a way that like so I agree with you that AI is human. It's an extension of humanity. It's an amazing I'm not a Luddite. I mean I'm in
Mhm.
digital marketing, I can't stress that enough. I for a long time I actually switched out of traditional to digital because I liked that instead of some self-important person or client telling me what was good and what wasn't, I liked that there was data to
Mm,
show why I chose this word and not that word, or why I
mhm.
that could have like an objective measurement of what is actually good and what is not. I love that.
Right.
And when I write, I mean, I've used Grammarly, I used subject and headline analyzer tools that
Mhm.
provide a score based on like what tends to get more clicks. And I
Yeah.
present that to the client and I say, obviously it's your call, but here's like how they performed if you want to
Here's the
know.
numbers.
You
Yeah.
know,
Like, you
I
can
love
tie
open
like that
rates, split
quantitative and
testing.
qualitative stuff. You can
Exactly.
tie the worlds
Qualitative.
together.
Exactly. I think I always thought the quantitative will strengthen the qualitative. And
Yeah.
I think that will happen. There are tools now like instead of ChatGPT, there's things like I think copy.ai and Jasper, where I haven't played around with them a lot yet, but
Yeah, I haven't either.
it's more like it's almost like having a team of writers with you in the room.
Hmm.
You're workshopping and you write and it makes suggestions, and not unlike what how many out there, even professional writers, we were using auto responses on Gmail and LinkedIn.
Hmm.
We were
Yep.
using auto filled text suggestions on an email because it's to learn how we write, and
Yeah, on Google Docs, it works phenomenally. When I'm
Google
writing
Docs.
something, if I'm saying the same phrase over and over again, it will learn it very, very quickly, and
That's
it absolutely
AI.
saves a second. Yes,
It's not that
it
new,
is
it's not that
100%.
scary. But
Yeah.
here's where I have a little concern, or I'm not sure. Maybe you could alleviate it. I don't know. But I love a collaborative tool that'll take because like I said, like I got very good at the mechanics, but I hate proofreading. You love it, I hate it. I'm not a big fan of outlining. I outline, I put all my ideas and I dump them on. But like I'm more of the like I get, I remember when I started writing, I'd be like, it's so annoying that a typo could cost someone from appreciating the unique angle I took here, the way that I'm communicating in this like
It
completely out of
distracts
the
from
box
it.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, kind of just a robot. I don't say it's dumb work, but it's like it's robotic work. And maybe I got my wish, like, all that. Well, so now I can just focus on the creative. Here's where I get concerned though. The collaborative tool makes us faster, better, lets us focus on the part of writing that we love, and less on the grunt work, as my friend put it. Is great. But what about somebody who's not a writer at all, really, or even if they are a writer, just putting prompts into ChatGPT and getting good at that, and then not even touching up the work at all. It types
Yeah.
up a whole book, blog post in 30 seconds. That's pretty good. Maybe even if as it evolves, it's amazing. It's like award-winning novel, maybe in the future. And they just say, I wrote this. This is my book.
This. Yeah.
Like this is my article. I mean, and I'm not talking about the how-tos and the listicles, which I just did more for, I had fun with them and I tried to make them creative, but I was already outsourcing some of that work.
Yeah.
I was more focusing on the where you need a voice and unique selling points. What do you think of that though?
Yeah, and that's what I do too, and that's why I kind of shifted away from sales copy and website copy because I wanted to have more room to run and to capture someone's voice and to tie in emotion and tie in stories. Um, there's so much content out there today, and it's so easy to create content. Anybody can create anything because there's just so many tools and there's so many how-to guides and there's just so much expertise that if you
Yep.
wanted to become an expert in anything, you 100% could. It just takes time and effort. So maybe, at least where my mind goes, when you talk about AI writing tools, writing out longer, more significant things like children's books or novels or
Yeah.
book series or movie scripts. Um, and as it gets better and gets better of tying in human emotion, what does our role then become? Maybe it means, where my mind immediately goes is like, maybe it means we just have to work a little bit harder and we have to be more intentional in our stuff that we as humans, as writers, directly create has to be better and has to highlight our differences because when I looked up like the failings of Chat GPT and stuff like that, like where is it falling short? The most common things are that it lacks like rhythmic cadence. It doesn't really have all of its sentences are generally around the same length and it's kind of repetitive. It uses the same words over and over again. It won't switch it up to catch the reader off guard. I think those things will probably go away as it learns and as it gets better, and probably within the next couple of months, maybe those won't be arguments against it right now.
Right. Hard to know.
But yeah, like it'll just learn and it will get better and it will
Like
realize,
as
oh,
of
I should
this
switch up my words.
recording, ChatGPT has only been public for about 2 months. So
Yeah, it's still super fresh, and I don't know how much longer it's going to be. I'm seeing a lot of murmurings in the rumor mill about Microsoft and how much money they're pumping in, and is it going to become a
oh,
paid
it's gonna
tool
become a
very
paid
soon?
service eventually. That'll be like, I don't know, $30 a month or something. It's gonna be who knows? It's not gonna
So
be
that'll
free
be a
forever.
limiter too. If it's free right now, it's open, anybody could use it. As soon as it becomes a paid tool, just like paid editing software, it then becomes a commodity, and clients are going to have to weigh the pros and cons. And oh, do I want to pay this to work with the tool that then I have to manage, or would I rather interact with a human and have them do the work for me and know that it will likely be better and can be improved upon in a different way than just figuring out the best way of feeding prompts into this AI
Yeah, so
tool?
like what you were talking about with copy, there's like a lot of people already do this. They hire people like me. And that's not the only work I do. I do higher level work and a lot of strategy, and I've focused into more multi-channel and ads to get like to drive ROI in a
Hmm.
trackable like way. But a lot of the like how to dumb things, all those things were this will shortcut for them in that instead of going to Google and finding 10 articles that are the same, having someone repurpose them and put the right keywords in so that you don't get flagged for duplicate content and play the whole Google game, that'll go because now you'll just have the chat GPT do it in 2 seconds. Fine. But for the higher level work, for now, you'll still if you want to really, because what's the point of marketing? To bring it to marketing for a second, is it to just play the SEO game? Is it to just share information that everybody has access to? No, it's to stand out. And I, would get frustrated with clients who just wanted to keep doing that game. Okay, fine. So I'll do it. I play the game, but I also always try to steer them to doing original content. Not every business has the bandwidth, or especially in B2B, they don't always care. They don't want to be Harmon Brothers necessarily,
Hmm.
with these creative out of the box ads and whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people just want to like, but now that you're going to be forced to do that, and I kind of like that, because that's
Yeah.
always what we should have been doing. But I guess we were saying with more significant writing, what if we get to the place AI is as good as a human, or a human can't outrun it because it keeps getting better, and let's pretend we live in a world where AI writing is as good as human writing, the best award-winning writing.
Yep.
Will people even care if it's written by a human or an AI? Will we just be competing with AI? Because I mean, one thing I don't think AI can really replicate is like human experience. You're sharing your own experience or opinions. It can mimic it, but like, and this gets back to what I've also long been my thing, is that brand is what matters more than anything. And if you build your brand for yourself, brand matters now more than ever. You need to have a brand now, because it's the only reason why someone would choose you over a competitor, because everyone now sounds the same.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, it's just an interesting question. Like
It's so interesting. It's like,
there
where is
are
it going?
wonderful works of written content. They're written by an anonymous
Yeah.
um or a pen name, and people love it anyway. So do you think anyone will care?
Yeah. I think imagine in 10 years you have two books in front of you, and one was written by an actual human coming from their own mind, and the other was written by an AI tool. You might read both, but you're going to be reading the AI written stuff with the knowledge that it was created by an AI. And I feel like in some ways that
Unless
will
they don't
taint the
disclose
experience
it.
unless they don't disclose it. But so maybe that's really the conversation is, okay, what rules and regulations do we have to put on AI so that it's all
Ethical.
clear and in the open and ethical, and you don't feel as though somebody could have their entire book written by an AI writing tool
Because it's
and then
like
claim that
cheating.
they
I
wrote it
mean,
themselves. It is in some
it's not
ways.
plagiarism. I know it's
Not
not.
plagiarism, it's something else.
But it's something new. And I think it's, what I think it's cheating or plagiarizing is when you say you wrote it. It's not the AI. It's you saying this is mine.
Yeah.
Um,
But what if it's something the AI wrote from my prompts? Do I then still have
right.
some intellectual property invested in it if it was my words that prompted the AI? Or let's go further into the future when the AI is even better, and you could have a conversation like we're having with AI, and you tell it your stories and you tell it your emotions and how you want the reader to feel and where you want the twist ending to end up and all of this, and then it goes and it spits out your 60,000 word novel. Did the AI write it, or did it just very quickly and accurately articulate my words and tell my story?
Right.
But is it still my story? I don't know.
And this will be something for the copyright lawyers. And look, this is only just the beginning. Where this is child's play compared to what's coming. Like right now, it's writing, but eventually you're gonna have fake video, AI video and
I mean,
AI
we already have
audio,
AI art. Like that's already, I've seen massive
design. Yeah,
conversations around that, around
right. I've been
design and
playing with Dali. I mean,
yeah.
but you're gonna have like you already had a thing where they had it was like it copied Joe Rogan's voice, sounded like him having a conversation with Steve Jobs, who he's never met, and has obviously been dead for years. So it was like, it's so freaky, and I've heard autonomous YouTube channels. So like it'll be essentially like avatars talking to avatars. I don't want to get too creepy and science fiction-y, but I mean that world is coming, and I think there'll have to be guardrails and ethics. But I mean this is just I feel like the younger generation, older generation like us might care. I feel like give it 100 years or something, maybe sooner. Kids might be like, I don't care if it was written by AI or a person.
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And you might have, I one of my friends told me that it's kind of like the Industrial Revolution. You lost
Mm-hmm.
craftsmen, blacksmiths, weavers, pottery makers, and machines did it. But
Yep.
he said, so you'll go the way writers will go the way of the weaver. But then I thought to myself, it's very niche and it's not scalable, but like you still have you have digital, but you still have people listen to vinyl. Um,
Exactly, and
um,
you still have people listening to live music. You
yeah,
still have people going to live shows, and to go back to like craftsmen, yeah, you have um massive jewelry manufacturers that pump out hundreds of thousands of the exact same product in a perfect mold, and you buy it and it comes at a good price because it doesn't take a lot to make. But then I have an artist that I follow on Instagram, whose name is Judikael Sacred Skulls. Everybody should check him out because his work is insane. And he charges an absolute premium for his work because he puts in real time and real effort and real materials. So
what does he do? Hand carvings or
he does this incredible blend of wood and metals and precious stones to make like skull shaped jewelry. It's very, very cool. He makes rings and he makes necklaces, and his stuff is just awesome. And he does do production pieces where he creates a piece and then puts it in a mold and has it mass produced, and it is a few $100s. But then he has pieces that he might work on for 6 months or longer. I don't even know the longest he's ever worked on a piece, and it could cost $10,000 or $12,000. So it's all jewelry, from the highest end his stuff to the sterling silver ring that you get at a crafts fair that's been mass produced a million times. It's all jewelry, but it comes at a vastly different price. So maybe that's what we're moving towards.
exactly. And I think it's not just like, so yeah, you can get you can go to get handmade baskets. You could get handmade pottery, and
Yep.
but you know what? A lot of that they charge more than if you bought it at a store, but it's not necessarily, it's art. It's not necessarily gonna put the food on the table necessarily. However, why does that guy charge so much? You just mentioned his Instagram. You can't just be kind of an artist anymore if you want to make money from it.
Mm-hmm.
He built a brand
Yeah.
utilizing Instagram, maybe other channels as well. And once you build a brand, like, so if you put an AI book versus a human author in front of me, I might not care. The one that I would read is the one I've heard of first. Because I have
Mm-hmm.
limited hours in the day, I have limited money in my budget. It's like I'm gonna order the thing I know I like before maybe trying the crazy new dish. So if the AI is an author, like an author, a prompter or whatever, and I know, and they're known, I might read but if the human author is someone I've heard of and I follow and I love their LinkedIn posts or whatever, like um I'm gonna check him out first.
Gonna check their stuff out, and maybe we as writers are becoming the craftsmen, and our work maybe comes out slower, and maybe it has to go through some other human editors, and takes a bit more time to come out. But there's, I think, not kindness and knowledge that it came directly from us and didn't go through an AI learning tool or
Yeah.
anything like that. So, and that's why I think the knowledge up front of what was written by AI and what was written by a person is so important. Like, and there should be disclaimers around what kind of content is created by the AI. I think that with art too, because I've seen arguments that the way that AI graphic tools work is they pull from already existing art, the same way that Chat GPT pulls from already existing words. So that art that it's pulling from was created by
An
actual
artist
humans by their own hand. So where's their
or
credit in that?
photography, right?
Yeah, or
Um,
photography, exactly.
yeah. So I mean, I know we're gonna wrap up, but this has been fascinating. But like I think for going forward, this is just what I think. Okay, I think writers, and it might be a painful adjustment for many of us, but I think we have to shift into, first of all, changing what writing is. It's going to be now, we're gonna have to, they always say that machines don't replace people. It's people who get to know how to use the machines replacing people who don't.
Hmm.
So we're gonna have to work with these AI tools. Maybe writing will be look a little more like editing.
Hmm.
But and if you're in marketing, I think the role of the copywriter, where it was always a consultative aspect, there was always the strategy aspect. And some people love that part more than others. Some people love more of the writing. But I think that copywriters, if you want to, if this feels really for you, you're gonna have to shift more into a strategist role
Hmm.
and less into just the writing role to and then finally, most important, and this goes for everyone, not just us, anyone in any field, they're all going to be disrupted. Build brand. You don't have a brand, you have no choice. Like, this is what you're trying to trade on. My question to you is, how do you feel about what I said? Is if writing becomes more like prompting and editing, do you still like write? Do you still want to be a writer?
I certainly do. You know, I love all aspects of the writing and editing world through publishing. I think it's fascinating. I don't do the publishing myself, but I love my strategic partners that do that whole side of things, and the cover design and illustrations, and even like the intricacy of stuff going down to the typeface and the spacing. I think it's fascinating how much work and how many different perspectives go into creating a book that you eventually buy at a bookstore like
Yes.
Barnes and Noble or Amazon. So I still am here. I'm still involved in the world, even if my role changes a little bit. And you know, if a client came to me with something, they're like, "Hey, I have this book that I had an AI write for me. Would you go in and make it sound more human?" I would jump on that
I
opportunity
mean,
in a
that's
heartbeat.
another thing. That's another argument, unfortunately, in favor of the AI over human, is that even now a lot of there's no great writer that or even a high powered business person, guru, even them even more so. It's always going through a combination of a ghostwriter, and most people
Hmm.
already know it, even if they don't say it out loud, and or editors, a team of editors or a group of writers, and it passes through different hands, and it's still their ideas. It has
Yeah.
their name on it, so they're endorsing this. And if they accurately captured their voice, it feels like them. I don't think we like it as much, even if we know it's a ghostwriter. We read it because we like the way they talk.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's why like it's so important to, even if you're using someone like me or like you or like an AI tool, make sure the words coming out sound like you and capture and your voice and your stories and say the things that you're trying to have it say. Like that's why when I'm working with somebody, I am so conscientious of how they speak and where their cadence lies and the story they're trying to tell. And then really it goes back and forth a few times because it takes time and work to make it all come
it's a
together.
collaborative process,
It's
absolutely.
100% a collaborative
I've
process.
been
That's
there
what's
as
so fun
well.
about it.
Yeah, it is fun. I've edited a few books too, not like so much for the grammar, but more like for the content.
Mhm.
And wrestling with authors saying, like, you know what, I think this should be its own chapter. Let's not cram too many ideas. Let's put this one first. And it's an ongoing conversation, and I think it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Hold on one second. I think it froze. I don't know if did I freeze on you?
No, you didn't freeze at all.
Okay. Oh, hopefully it picked up all this recording.
I
Anyway, hold
think
on
it
once.
did. Yeah,
Hold on.
yeah. I didn't notice you freezing or anything.
Oh, and it's all working. Okay, great. All right. Well, Adam, thank you. I'm sure I'll have to have you back sometime.
I
There's
would
so
love
much to
to.
cover, and we have to see how things evolve and how things go. But one thing I know for sure that we will evolve. We will find a way to still practice a craft that we love and make it work for us. And if you're out there listening and you're worried about AI, whether you're a writer or in another field that's going to get disrupted, you know, listening to people like Adam, I think you will find a way to, innovate, iterate, and find new opportunities.
Definitely. This was so much fun, man. Thanks so much for having me on and having this conversation with me. And I look forward to more conversations that we can have on these fascinating topics in the future.
Thanks. Bye bye.